Hi, and welcome to the first ever edition of RFPODlooza, a podcast by advertising people and for advertising people. Here we'll discuss topics ad people are interested in, sometimes not even about advertising. Today's topic is Life After Madison Avenue, and our guest is Tricia Bradley, CEO of Serious Fun Productions. She had a successful career as an art director at Y&R, but then left for a sabbatical, sort of, and went on to another successful career in TV production, where she produced a reality TV show and another show focusing on sports medicine. On top of that, she also launched the careers of two pretty well-known celebrities. Tricia's story is fantastic and redemptive. She has an amiable, joyous method of salesmanship that is quite refreshing in today's dog-eat-dog, zero-sum world. She loves and respects the people she works with, and it shows. So let's meet Trish. So Trish, you had a great career on Madison Avenue, and then you found life after Mad Avenue and became a TV producer and a celebrity maker. So what accounts did you work on?
I worked on Jell-O, brand gelatin, and I worked on MetLife, and I worked on all the pitches for all the cool things. I worked on so many things. I worked on Channel 13, PBS. That was very exciting because I got to draw the art that went in the New York Times for the print ads.
Cool.
So that was very cool. I am not an illustrator.
Okay, but to see your own work, on the New York Times, that must have been pretty gratifying.
It was very gratifying.
So at a certain point, this is about life after Madison Avenue. At a certain point, you left. Tell us about that.
I actually married Paul Hockman, who was working as an account coordinator. We got engaged, and he wanted to decide between writing and teaching. And so we went up to Phillips Academy, where he went to high school, and I spent a year, first time in my whole adult life at that point, not working. And so I took classes at Phillips Academy Andover for a year. And
then I hear that an opportunity came up.
Yeah, while I was there, they were changing heads of school. And for some reason, they didn't like their PR company that was going to announce this new head of school. It was top secret. And so the head of school asked me to come see him, and I was not teaching. I'm like, all right. And he said, well, we are hoping you can handle the announcement of our new head of school. And I'm like, well, I'm not a PR person because I was an art director. And they said, well, he said, you know us and you know the media, and we're going to pay you $10,000 for 3 weeks work.
Okay. There you go.
Okay. And I got the news around the world, partly because they have all these alumni. They had a list of alumni, including the New York Times. And I would call them. And the New York Times, I remember speaking to that person who said, if we can fit it in, we will. And they did. It was fun. It was fun. I liked it. It was talking on the phone, which anyone who knows me likes.
We know that, yes. And sometimes it's just about being at the right place at the right time.
Exactly. Well, and I love people. And I think that for the most part, if you're going to be in advertising or the media, in any different kind of job, that has to be part of who you are if you're going to be successful. Don't you think?
For sure. Yeah. I mean, a lot of the work that a lot of talented people are in advertising, but if they don't have a client, they can't show their talents, and somebody has to be the one who has the personality to go out there and find clients. So having good people skills is never a bad idea. So at a certain point, after you dipped your toe into public relations, you became a celebrity maker for Paul.
Yep. I started with Paul because he was writing for ski magazine. His biggest gig, he was freelancing for all kinds of magazines, but the point of going to Phillips Academy Andover was to decide between teaching and writing. And he was so talented at both. And he ended up choosing teaching for a year, and then writing. And he was writing while we were there. He was sending out magazine queries and getting hired to do all these, top level magazines. And he'd already been on the ski test team for Ski Magazine and writing ski articles. And he loved that. And so he ran the ski test. So I thought if I could get my talented, funny husband on TV, he would make more money. And he got paid, I remember he got paid $1 a word. So I walked around with his magazines and I don't even know if I had any footage. But I brought him to Channel 7 News, Mish Michaels, weather person who skied. She did the ski report. And that's really why he got hired by Channel 7, NBC in Boston. He became more and more well-known, and that we were off to the races. I was making my way into these local news channels where these people are celebrities, and getting my way into that person to talk to them.
Well, it must take a certain mystique to do that, because a lot of people knock on doors and they never get in. So what do you think you had? Was it just perseverance?
I think that calling people and figuring out who to talk to, and then having something that they might be interested in. And also, I think being 100% behind the person. I think joy and happiness and love, people are drawn to that. We got a call because Paul went to high school at Phillips Academy with Kevin. His last name, I'm spacing it, and I'm sorry, Kevin, but he called Paul and said, I know you're writing for Ski Magazine. I'm doing this TV show called Skiing Magazine on TV. I'll give you a minute of my hour-long show, but I have no money. So that's how I started. I said I knew two things. Oprah owned her programming and she had no money. So I'm like, if I can fund the shooting and editing with product placement that doesn't interfere with the editorial, I'm not going to pay for the honor of working. And Kevin was, and I wanted to own it. Okay. And so Kevin was 100% cool with both of those things. So that's how we started shooting these segments. It was just me and Paul and Sam Patton. We'd go out and we'd shoot these segments. And it was a lot of fun, and they turned out pretty good. And he gave us as much time as we wanted. Really, we had but it was funny after spending years doing 30-second commercials and 15-second commercials. And if you're lucky, 1 minute, having as much time as you want. And nobody's saying it's not correct, or it's not, you don't have the selling point in, or the strategy, or and nobody was looking over our shoulder. It was just us. And it was our sensibilities.
So, but then I hear you made it really big when you got on a certain morning show.
Well, this is an interesting story. I got a call from a producer at ESPN, and she called and said, I think you're doing the best skiing programming I've ever seen. But anyway, we tried to get Paul onto Winter X Games, because X Games was their big signature show. Because I got a call from Lori Zabowitz and said, you know what? They're not going to use you. And I'm so mad at them. But NBC is doing a thing called the Gravity Games. And it's basically a ripoff of the X Games. So I sent the reel that I produced with Paul in it because she told me who the producer was. So I just sent that reel to that producer, And I got a call right away. Just watched your reel. And who's Paul? And, he had all the credentials for winter. They flew up to see us. So they're there, and he got hired, but it wasn't for winter. It was for summer X game. And it was the hardest thing I've ever seen. There were 6 cameras. Gabby Reese was the co-host. There were all these other, reporters down in the Biker X and all the different summer X Games sports. And they were so mad that an unknown got the gig. And they were telling all of the athletes not to let him interview them, because basically he and Gabby were in this cool garage set that they built, and we helped put all the gear in because we knew all the stuff. We knew all about gear. It's all we dealt with. And so the stage manager was watching Paul and hearing, because she had the earpiece, and she was listening to the director and the truck, and they were not so nice about Paul. He did a fine job given how hard they made it. And it was a lot of fun in many ways, but it was very difficult because we go from just me directing with one camera, and suddenly he's got 6 cameras and he's writing things, and it's like different cameras to turn to, and they were very, very, very hard on him. I think the general anger that this unknown person got this chance had just seeped into every part of this, including the director and the executive producer. And so it was hard, but he did the best he could. And Ann Wallace was the stage manager, and she and I became friends. And she said, you should pitch a ski segment to the Today Show. So I pitched this segment where we're going to build a ski mountain at 30 Rockefeller Center in the center of New York City. So not only did I have to, and Paul helped for sure, get somebody to build this ski mountain for free, I had to get them to remove it. And so I talked to, I forget what their name was now, but it was a ski mountain near New York. And I told them that Matt Lauer would thank them because he loves skiing. He was going to be the skier on this snow hill. And what I didn't know was there was a chance he would forget. Matt Lauer finally comes out, and he has the steps built on the back. Like, he goes up the steps, and the segment happens, and they break away to commercial, which wasn't the plan. And they come back, and Katie Couric walks out of the studio in her leather pants and 6-inch high heels. and Matt Lauer skis down again and talks to her. And they're like, Paul, come down. Paul Hockman, come down. And he comes down, and Matt did thank the ski mountain. Thank goodness. But that was the beginning of a regular gig on the Today Show. It started with just gear, sports gear. And then the technology guy got let go, and Paul just took that on too. And so that was a very years and years and years, and everything came from that.
I'm sure. And for most people, landing a regular gig on the Today Show would have been, at the pinnacle. But you went even further and had your own reality TV show. Why don't you tell us a little bit about that?
So we wanted I wanted a bigger house. Just so much money. And I thought, well, we wrote a show we called it My House. And it was basically home construction from the homeowner's perspective. This old house had been on for a number of years, and there were all of these home shows that were from designers' perspectives. And we're like, there's no one from. So I don't even know how it happened, but we went down and we pitched this show called My House, and it was just that. And we had humor because we loved humor, and we tried. I was not supposed to be on camera because I hate being on camera. So the show we sold, Discovery Home. It's now Oprah's channel. Oprah comes back into my story again. Oprah's channel, and
not a bad role model.
No, we somehow got in front of these people to pitch this show, and I remember. Well, and anyone watching this who makes TV shows will just laugh because I wasn't smart enough to figure out to call somebody and say, what should I charge? They said they bought the idea right there in the meeting. They said, what do you think? What will this cost per episode? And I think we said $45,000
for the whole thing,
for each episode.
For each
episode. And they're like, they didn't burst out laughing, but they were very close. They're like, we think we can afford that.
Okay.
And I was going to be directing this, not in it. It was the first time we sold an idea, and we didn't own it. Discovery owned it. And we also, it was so hard. Because they were like, Paul 1 and Paul 2, like they wanted Paul 1, they didn't want Paul 2. And
what do you mean by Paul 2?
That's right. They had I think they meant serious, normal Paul and funny Paul. So they had, and then they pushed me in the picture, which was not good. There's a scene of me where I'm so wooden.
Yeah. Well, I remember a scene where you were really pissed off.
Yeah.
Where you were sitting on your front stoop or something, or the back.
It was bad. I mean, we were exposed personally, professionally, and financially. We were paying for a portion of the house remodel. Sure. We definitely got a lot of things donated, and we had people, like we had a very top-notch architect who wanted to be in the show, do the designs. We had great designers. I mean, it's such a pretty house. I still live here. I love this place. And, the show did air, but there was a time where I thought, oh my God, I didn't even realize they could put all this money into it. We could be shooting and editing and making shows, and they could choose not to air it. And I shudder to think, but it aired, and it aired for a long time. And they had these days where they'd run the whole show, and they ran it. I think it was American Airlines or United Airlines. People would call up and say, I just saw you on the airplane. And I get, if it ever gets re-aired, I still get emails. People will email me. It's been a while from people saying, well, what product did you use here? And, it was pretty fascinating. People are very smart. But the show ended up being called House Lift. They hated the name My House. And we had basically a naming party, and we offered our crew a pair of skis, whoever.
Really?
And it was Senna Tang, the daughter of a dermatologist, who named it. She came up with House Lift, like facelift, but for your house.
She's just a little double entendre there too, I guess.
Yeah.
So did you hire the crew?
Oh yeah, these are all our people. And so I would always include my crew on, if we were interviewing somebody, what didn't we ask? What would you guys want to ask? And not only were they part of the brain trust, sure, and they felt valued because we still value them, but I would, if I resold, since I owned all my programming except for House Lift, I could repackage and resell the old programming. If I did that, I would give a bonus to Sam and to Eric and
Very nice.
Well, I couldn't have done it if it wasn't for their good work, and wasn't valuable if it wasn't.
You don't see that type of niceness in Hollywood or the TV industry. So there you go. You get a gold star.
Yeah. Well, I it's how I wanted to be treated.
Sure.
And I know that the work wouldn't have been as good without them. And I felt like they should be rewarded.
Oh, that's for sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, and you built a great team, and you had teamwork, and and everybody was engaged and invested. So that's 100%. The way to build a team. And we've seen situations where that doesn't happen. So after a while, your marriage broke up, and now there's life after Paul. What happened? How did you deal with that?
So my whole career at that point, leaving Y&R, was about Paul. Everything was, that's all I sold. That's all I thought about. I remembered and had made friends with Jackie Addix and her husband, Mark Addix. And both our eldest children are girls, and they went to the Montessori school. And I think it's when they were 3 or 4. And Mark Addix had a 9-year NFL pro football career. He started in the USFL. And he was at Harvard Medical School.
And you, of course, live in suburban Boston, so that made a lot of sense. So a little serendipity, but that's great.
So we became friends, and I remember meeting Mark, and I said, "Can I see your Super Bowl ring?" And I guess it was just happened to be down there, and he threw it up the stairs.
Oh, really?
I don't think I caught it. He bounced. It was just this giant ring. He was an offensive lineman. And I remember saying to him, when you're done with your medical training, I'd like to build your TV career.
So there you are, a star maker. Okay.
I did not think so, but I was so worried that it was all Paul. I'm living in this big house in this expensive town, 2 kids in private school, and no income.
Well,
welcome to a tough life.
No, that's scary.
Very scary, very, very scary. So Jackie told Mark what was going on, and Mark Addix called me up and said, "Tricia Bradley, every time I see Paul Hochman on the Today Show, I know you're behind the scenes. I would be so, I don't know if he said grateful, but I would love to work with you and have basically marrying his 2 careers, medical and his football career. He'd love to do that." At that point, he was an orthopedic surgeon. Okay. He had gone through all his training, and he was at a hospital, big hospital in Houston, Texas. I didn't have, like big companies. I didn't have like development funds. So they pitched in $10,000 to build a reel. So I rented a room at Beth Israel Hospital, an operating room that I wanted to shoot I need to shoot a talent reel so I could show people him and how good he is on camera. So he'd never been on camera, right? Or, and I'd never directed anyone but Paul. So I'm like in this, I've got this team, I've got a gaffer. We're in this expensive operating room that they rented to me. It's one where they train orthopedic surgeons, where they have, dummies and robots and things they put on the table. And there's flat screens all the way around the room. And when I rented, I said, can I pump in football footage to these screens? I'm trying to get, and I want it. And so they're like, yeah. And Marked in his scrubs, and we have him for one of the scenes. I remember we had him like wash his hands with that orange stuff like they always do on Grey's Anatomy and everything.
Yep.
He caught a football like after in his hands, and I remember thinking, is that football too small? Because in his gigantic hands,
Oh,
football in my hands looked huge, and his hands looked like a toy. And at the beginning of the day, I had him introduce himself. And he was awkward, and I was awkward. And Sam Patton, again, saying, we should try this at the end of the day, because I got better, Mark got better, and we redid the beginning of the day at the end of the day. What he wanted was to be ESPN's injury analyst. They had an injury analyst. So this is amazing human who is built to be a teammate. Most surgeons are stallions. They don't like each other. And I don't know if that's still the case, but it was the case then. And I'm trying to break him into ESPN. So I get him on the Today Show talking about concussions and helmets, and so I was basically building the reason he could be trusted with being an injury analyst on ESPN. So in order to further build basically his positioning, I wanted to position him as the foremost sports medicine authority, especially in football. I figured football is so big and there's so much money there. So I wrote a show called Athlete 360. I wrote a treatment. I started pitching it. And I checked LinkedIn, and somebody I worked with at Outdoor Life was now in Houston at Fox Sports Houston.
okay.
And I called him, and he's like, let's do this. Because he was new there. He was the program manager, director of programming. And I sold Athlete 360 as first in the state of Texas, big state. I was not unhappy with that. Jeff Hallis was the director of programming. He made a meeting for Mark and me and him at Fox Sports National. So we took this show and we presented it to Fox Sports National, and it cleared nationally. So we re-edited it, and then I did another. I owned it. Mark Addix and I own it, and so we did a second season with older athletes, and it was so much fun. And I got letters and emails from people who teach physical therapy or teach injury, like to high school students, and they wanted DVDs, and that's a whole nother business. So basically the positioning was, he's a world-class athlete, Mark Addix is, and he's a world-class surgeon. So we interviewed world-class athletes about, so Dikembe Mutombo, for example, he's one of them. And we interview him about his whole life from when he was very young to through the career-ending injury for Dikembe. And then we would interview a surgeon. So in this case, Mark Addix was a surgeon for Dikembe's ruptured quad tendon with two others. But then, so it would basically be split into three parts. One, world-class athlete, whole life, which was really interesting. You don't usually get that.
So we're running out of time.
Let me quickly tell you, we did get Mark in as ESPN's injury analyst. It took 3 years. And when he got it, we got 3 offers, and ESPN paid him 10 times to keep him from everybody else. But it was quite a relief to have that happen, because I was so worried it was just Paul. And then it was clearly I had some skills too. So I think
you were underselling yourself, I guess, during that transition time. But people that I worked at ad agencies. I worked at Young and Rubicam with you way back when. And a lot of people you knew at ad agencies would die to have a TV show. And you were able to do it, and through perseverance and talent and ingenuity, So I want to thank you very much for doing this, particularly being the first guest on this podcast.